Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Digital Edge podcast. I'm Dominic, your host, with my co host Françoise.
Hi, Dominic.
And today we're talking about the digital divide. I think many of you have heard about the digital divide over the years. It's basically unequal access to digital technology amongst different groups of users of digital technology. And so we wanted to dig into that a little bit and see where we stand. Is that still a thing today, or is it something of the past now that everybody basically has a mobile device to get online? Francoise.
Yeah, actually, digital divide is still a reality, and we can cut it along different dimensions. I mean, the one dimension is obviously about where you live, and there is still a huge gap between developed countries and developing countries. For example, internet access in Europe is 91%, when in Africa it's only 38. And these are, figures from 2024, but not
The ratio is
drastic
in that
change.
ballpark probably still
Yeah,
today.
yeah. Yeah, so obviously, there's still a huge gap, and I mean, myself, I've worked with countries in Sahel, sub-Saharan countries, and obviously, when you want to deploy digital tools there, you need to understand that there is sometimes no access to electricity, no
Mhm.
network, and you have to take that into account. So I think that divide related to electricity infrastructure is still very present. Sorry. And maybe along the same line, there is also this urban versus rural areas with limited access. And even in the US, there are still parts of the country that are not so well connected
Mhm.
as what I have seen. I mean, is this something that is often talked about in the US?
Yes, it's still a topic, right? As late as a few years ago, there still has been plans for significant investment of broadband into rural communities. I think some of those plans have now gone away with the current administration. And one thing that has really popped up in the last couple of years is satellite internet, particularly with Starlink. And I know people that I work with that live in rural areas that previously had very bad internet connections. They are now able to get a satellite connection that's basically as fast as a traditional broadband connection. So I think there's one offering. Of course, it puts a bunch of satellites into the sky, and it's ever growing. I think, but there are now opportunities, right, for more people in rural areas. And I was looking up what the numbers look like. Out of the 10 million people that are or subscribers that Starlink has right now, about 10% of them, about just over a million, previously had no internet access or very poor internet access. Right, so there's a technology shift happening there, but the world's a big place, right? And there's a lot more people that are just not able to get to a connection due to
Yeah,
affordability
yeah,
or even electricity, right?
yeah. So I mean, these are two aspects
Mhm.
related to infrastructure, technology, availability of the service. But there are other types of divide that are more related to socio-demographic
Mhm.
aspects. One is about the level of education. So people with higher education have more access to digital tools, to usage of digital, and that's also. I think the difference is the gap is lower, but still, that there is that difference. Another gap that was interesting and maybe a bit surprising to me is men tend to be more connected to digital technology than women, and maybe it's also related to level of education, level of income, that is driving this difference. And maybe the third one that is a bit obvious is about, generation gap, where obviously the younger generation are very much connected, whereas more senior people less. But this one, I'd like to debunk a bit that idea. I'm teaching in some undergrad schools, and when I hear my students saying that, ooh, people who are 50-year old, they don't have Instagram, I'm like, okay, maybe obviously there is a difference in terms of usage, and maybe some social networks are more dedicated to younger people. But I think we should take for granted that now everybody is, I mean, in developed countries, in our markets, everybody is using the internet or the mobile phone one way or the others, and we shouldn't, believe that anyone above 50 is totally disconnected. Have you heard the same type of reactions?
Yeah, I think probably more stereotypical than actual real facts, right? I mean, if you're looking at the people that are 40, 50 years old, they basically accompanied the internet generation, right? They built most of what we have today and what's in place, right? So I would assume that if somebody's 50 right now, they're not that old, right? If you say like, okay, maybe the 80, 90-year olds, okay, perhaps, but even them, I see seniors. I've seen my parents, in that age group, they got onto the computers and they communicate, they play even games, uh, office work, whatever, right? They totally integrated during their days as well. So I think that age uh, demographic is probably not as solid separation as one might think.
Yeah. And if I look at my parents who are 80 plus, they have no choice. They have to access their bank account online.
Mm,
They don't get statements anymore. They have to make their tax
right.
declaration online. So, willing or not, they had to jump into using
Yeah.
internet.
So it is.
So this is, I mean, what we've talked about, those five dimensions are related to the general digital divide, but have you seen anything additional related to AI?
Yeah, that's a great question, right? I think there's still, like you said, there's work to be done. Not everybody's connected, and I think a big step up was the mobile devices, right? And the capability that mobile devices now have. You can, a few years ago, you had to have a computer or a bigger screen, and now everything's geared towards mobile experiences. And I think that was a huge step forward in getting more and more people connected. What I think is, now looking forward a little bit and what the future holds in terms of digital divide is in the AI space. And the reason why I'm saying this is we're seeing these huge investments into AI infrastructure, right? I mean, from data centers to power to compute, software, and so forth. I mean, tens of billions of dollars. There's always a new announcement about these kinds of ginormous investments being made on a weekly basis still. And what I think is going to happen, right, is that with these huge investments, somebody's going to be looking for that money to come back someday,
Yeah.
right? And so while we're all happy to use ChatGPT and Claude and Gemini freely, more or less, some people, of course, power users, they already are paying subscription fees for that. And I think what we'll see is that the cost of utilizing AI capabilities, at least unless we see some serious optimizations, is going to continue to creep up, right? And what's going to happen is once the cost keeps creeping up, it becomes less and less accessible to many people. And what I'm somewhat worried about is that the people that have been able to do work with AI, and only because of AI, will not be able to return to do their work independently anymore. And they will be stuck to it. Hence, you either keep paying for it at increasing rates, or you won't be able to function anymore effectively. You won't be competitive in the marketplace. So maybe, I don't know,
Yeah.
somewhat of a doomsday scenario of creating that separation between the haves and the have nots even further. But I think we're
Yeah.
heading potentially in that direction.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point because if you think about all these, gaps between, access or ability to use those tools, they can have very serious consequences on people. I mean, one obviously is isolation, not being able to connect with other people because now a lot of the connection is done online or through mobile phone, as you said. But I think it's also less access to opportunities, looking for jobs, looking for, anything, business opportunities. If you are not connected, it's hard to access. And I think connected to what you just said, I think the other impact is having less access to knowledge and skills. Because if you are not able to tap into all the knowledge that is available online, you might go backward. And obviously with AI even more so, as you said, on one side it means you cannot have access to the power of these tools. On the other side, if you have been a user of those tools and you have somehow not fine-tuned your skills, you might also be a bit obsolete in what you can do.
Right.
So there are a lot of impacts that can
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah, so I think it's an interesting dynamic as we move forward, right? Again, hopefully there will be a resolution and cost will decrease with scale and technology will evolve, that it requires less
Yeah.
resources to get the benefit of the technology and help us move forward as a society, right? But in the
Hmm.
at the current rate, I think it could be something that, again, back to the digital divide, is something that could separate us going forward. So I think it's something to watch and keep an eye on. And I would say, in the meantime, let's keep up our skills of being able to do the work and understand things
Yeah.
ourselves versus fully
With or without.
versus fully
Yes.
relying on AI and hoping that it gives us the right
Yeah.
answers.
Yeah. So, we touched a bit on the solution. So, as you said, there are some initiatives to expand infrastructure, access to electricity, whether it's done at the national level or, big organization like ITU have those programs of access. But as you said, also private companies like Starlink are expanding access to internet and digital. I think the other side about using those tools is education. We used to teach people how to read and calculate, but now we also need to educate people and maybe the ones who have less access to use those tools. That's definitely. And I think the other thing is, as you mentioned, is how you keep up with your skills in a connected or disconnected world. I mean, you need to now to play on both sides,
Yeah,
right?
I think so. I mean, at some point, maybe we'll still have to decide to go back to do things like we did before if the tools become cost prohibitive. So I think it'll be an interesting balance,
Yeah.
right, to see how that evolves. Looking forward to how that comes about.
Okay. Thank you, Dominic, for this conversation,
Yeah,
and talk to you very
yes,
soon.
great topic. Thank you, Françoise. Thanks everyone for watching, and we'll see you next time on the Digital Edge podcast. Make sure to subscribe below and get notified of new episodes coming out shortly. See you next time.